Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of our 5-Minute Fridays. I'm Ed Aube from Red Level, and today I'm here to talk to you a bit about working from home and some of the technology and things that go with that. Here's my contact information. That'll be also in the slide deck if you want to see it later. This is the second, this is a kind of a condensed version of this slide. We had a longer one that was about 30 minutes on Tuesday. So if you want to get that information will be sent to you afterwards if you're intrigued about hearing a little more, but I'm going to give you a high level of this. So as everybody knows, with COVID-19, was a big push for people working from home even before it was mandated. And some of the things that allow people to work from home are different applications or different services. And the one that people know the most is software as a service. So software as a service, or SaaS, has been around for quite a few years. And what you would know for it is even your banking application, but for companies, their financial, their HR, their payroll, a lot of applications are now hosted with that application company or a third-party hoster, and it really frees up people not only to work mobile within their organization and not have to maintain this application, but outside of their four walls or their multiple locations. Some common software as a service obviously are things like Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, Exchange. Those are all Microsoft products. And again, I mentioned other things like payroll, security systems. There's a lot of stuff. And this is a subscriber type of society now. Everyone is subscribing to something or another. I mean, you can get food delivered, you can get socks and razors and everything else, but software as a service has been around. IT's been leading this for many years, and you're basically paying per seat or per company. Then we switch over to infrastructure as a server, or IaaS. So sometimes one application with software as a service just isn't enough. You might need to have multiple applications. You may be working off an older machine or a cut down version of a machine, that like a thin client that really is only a terminal that gets you into an infrastructure, and then your applications and your data are stored there. So that's what IaaS is, and there's several ways to deliver it. You may be running software as a service inside of an IaaS because it's not necessarily all there inside of that infrastructure, but your desktop is there. And whether that's a server desktop, and we'll talk about that a little bit, or a Windows, like a Windows 10 desktop, that's the big difference when it comes to IaaS. But again, hosted items, SharePoint Online, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive for Business, and Exchange Online, all great examples of things that would be in both of these, either as software as a service or infrastructure as a service. So how do you get to those things, right? Especially when it's infrastructure as a service. In my longer slide, I talked about the evolution of kind of the workplace and how you would be in cubicles, and that's evolved, right? Where people then went to mobiles, and again, you can hear more about that, but remote desktop, or VDI environments, virtual desktop infrastructure, have been around for several years. A remote desktop really provides you a desktop at your place of business, or host it with a third party. But the difference between that and VDI is that this is really server-based, meaning you're getting a Windows Server 2019 or depending 2016, depending on what you have, as a desktop, which is different than a Windows 10, which is where a virtual desktop environment comes into play. It truly is a Windows 10 environment, so it's going to be similar to what you're seeing on PCs or on laptops. You can also connect to both of these environments with devices such as tablets or mobile phones. A lot of people are doing that. It's a little more challenging on a mobile phone because even though some phones are gotten huge, but most are still not intended to show an entire desktop or really applications. A remote accessible desktop. While that might sound similar to the two above, the difference is this is not server based. We have a lot of companies that we've worked with over the years, and especially in the last few weeks, that had to get people remote access very quickly. Well, they might have had 10, 20, 50, or 60 desktops that people used every day inside of their office, but they didn't have laptops to give them so that they could go and work from home. So what remote accessible desktop means is you're giving the end users, your team, your staff, a way to get into this remote desktop. That physical desktop that's at your desk or at your cubicle, from just about anywhere that you have internet access. The other things to keep in mind for all these environments is that it keeps the data at the server or at the SaaS level. You're not bringing that to someone's home computer or tablet or even a company-owned laptop. You're keeping the data centrally located. And that's where we're talking about organization-owned laptops. Another thing that most people are familiar on using, whether it's mobile or truly working from home dedicated, is virtual private networks or VPN. Well, that basically extends that organization, that environment, to wherever the remote user is at. So you typically do not want to do that on private or personal machines, because it goes two ways. Yes, it gets you access into that environment, but it also allows access the other way around. So it's making your personal machine susceptible to anything that's coming from corporate and vice versa. So we definitely discourage people from using personal machines with VPN. There are ways to limit it, but it gets kind of challenging and takes a lot more administration and effort. Some other access tools that you're going to use, we talked about cell phones or smartphones. Not only are you processing data on them, you have almost everybody has apps for just about everything, whether it's the Office suite or, you know, to book a haircut at your barber shop. They go back to their primary function of allowing you to call, and to make calls and receive calls. And this has also changed a lot in the last several years, where companies used to issue everyone that needed to work remotely a cell phone so that they would be using that. But things have changed. Security has improved a lot, so that now people can bring their own personal phone or use their own personal phone for business use and separate the data. Similar to that is soft phones. So soft phone is basically allowing you to use an application on your computer, tablet, laptop, even cell phone, to hook into a corporate or a company-owned phone system or managed phone system. So that phone system, you then are an extension, just like you would be whether you're down the hallway or over at another building or even at another state or location. So the soft phones, I'm using my laptop right now in that manner. I'm using the mic and the speakers to talk to you and to deliver this, and I had basically called in. It can be for webinars, but it can be, I can call someone that's on a cell phone or a landline on the other side. So with all these things, you have to really consider what else is happening. And there's so many variables that we talked about in the previous slides about BYOD, which is bring your own device. So there has to be policies in place, not only to protect the company and the company's data, but to protect the end users. As we have more and more people working remotely, if you thought you were getting a lot of spam email and things that spoof, they're going to increase, right? People know you're no longer working behind a firewall or in a protected environment. Yeah, do you have some protections? Absolutely. But policies have to be determined to make sure that one, employees and team members know how to use these equipment, how to access all this, but know what not to do as well to keep themselves safe and the data safe. And cell phone policy is similar too, is keeping a separation between personal and corporate. I can't stress how important this is. Not only for the company that you're working for or your team, but for yourself, right? Because your information is out there, especially if you're using a private device. So again, working from home is the new norm, and there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of different things, but there's a lot of technology out there to make it easier for you. It is a change, and I know it's tough to go through changes, but people will adapt. There's companies like Red Level that our whole purpose is to make that transition for you easier, right? And then also the transition back to the office when we get the all clear. So if you look at this slide here, this has the longer version that goes into much more detail about each of those components and how you connect, and also the history of the process and how it's evolved. So you can get this. We'll also send this to you after the 5-Minute Friday is over. I want to thank everyone for coming. Again, here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about this, or if you have problems getting over to the other side, if you're interested in learning more, or you see that and you have some questions or need some help. We have a work from home readiness check sheet that we're using with our clients and companies that we're helping, and we would go through that with you. If you haven't received that, please ask and we'll be happy to send it. Again, thanks for joining and stay safe.